Please remember that the complete information for the class that you are about to view is at elithecomputerguy.com. Not only do we have our videos there, but we have part lists, diagrams, pictures, and even complete code examples. So if you are watching this video and you want more information, please go to elithecomputerguy.com. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class we're going to be doing an introduction to the Nmap network mapping software. So this is network mapping software you can run from the Linux command line, and what will happen is when you run this software you can either query one particular device or you can query an entire network. You can look for the IP addresses on the network. You can grab the MAC addresses for those hosts that are found on the network. From those MAC addresses you can try to discover what the vendor for the different products are. You're able to see what ports are open on the different devices, and you're also able to try to determine what operating systems are on these particular devices. So this is something that you can run at the command line, and basically the results can either print out onto your terminal screen, or you can export the results into a text file or into an XML file so that you can then look at the information basically in a normal text file, or be able to parse the XML file so that you can use that information in some type of product or software that you're going to be creating. So Nmap network mapping software is one of those things that is really cool if you're not an absolute beginner. So if you're an absolute beginner, right, when you use the Nmap, you're going to get all of this text printed out on the screen. You're going to be sitting there like, oh, what am I supposed to do with this? And then you're going to go off and use Spiceworks, right? That's the reality. If you're new to the networking world, you want something pretty graphical, you want something pretty easy to use, and let's be clear, Nmap isn't that. This is a text-based command line tool. It's going to give you a lot of information, but it's going to be up to you to figure out what to do with that information. Again, if you want something nice and pretty and graphical and all that kind of thing, use Spiceworks or something from SolarWinds, that type of deal. What's really cool about the Nmap software is you can run it from the command line, which means you can script it. So I'm actually using this in a project right now. I am using a cron job to actually fire off an Nmap script approximately every 10 minutes. And so what happens is that Nmap script fires off. It then dumps the information that it finds into a text file, into an XML file, and then I use a PHP script in order to parse that XML file, dump the data then into a database, and then I'm able to create an application around that. So that's what makes Nmap really cool. Is again, it's not for the beginner user, but if you understand what's going on with the network mapping software, what's really great is you can export all of this information, and then once that information is then dumped into something like a text file, you can have other scripts be able to parse or read that text file to be able to present you with good and useful information. So when you're thinking about Nmap, it's kind of one of those things you've got to really consider where you're using it within your particular situation. If you just want a nice, pretty, easy to use graphical user interface type network mapping software, Nmap is most likely not going to be what you want. If you want to be able to pull information from the network, dump that into some kind of data file, and then be able to do something with the data file, that's where Nmap gets very interesting. So we're going to be doing a brief introduction to the Nmap network mapping software today. I think you're going to find that it's very exciting, very interesting. Even if some of the things that I show you are currently over your head, keep Nmap in the back of your mind, because I'm sure within a couple of years you will get to the point where you'll start to understand why this type of product can be very useful. So there are a few warnings for when you're going to be using Nmap. The first warning for you is before you go in front of your boss or before you go in front of your friends and to show them this really cool tool you just learned how to use, make sure to test, and maybe test one more time. Do you remember Nmap is a Linux-based tool, and being a Linux-based tool, you get some interesting results out of that Linux-based tool. I've been using it for a while now, and it's one of those things where, like, once you understand what you want out of Nmap, once you understand what you're going to get out of Nmap, it becomes a great tool. But there are so many options available to you when you're using Nmap. One of the big problems is you can assume Nmap is going to do something, or Nmap is going to work in a way that you expect it to work, and you can run into problems when Nmap just does whatever the hell it wants to do, right? So again, I mean, it's one of those things where once you understand the product, once you understand Nmap, it's going to be very easy to use and it's going to give you the results that you're expecting. The big issue that you run into is when you initially start using Nmap, the results that you get may not look like what you think you're supposed to be getting. The next warning for you, and this is actually a big one, this is kind of like bold, underline, italicize this in your brain, is when you're running this on Linux, you're going to want to run this as the root user, or if you're using like a Debian version of Linux or Ubuntu, you want to use sudo before the nmap command when you're going to be running nmap. The reason for this is kind of weird, but for whatever reason, you're not actually able to access the MAC addresses for the devices that you're scanning if you do not run nmap as root. So basically, if you run nmap as the normal user, it'll go out, it'll find the IP addresses, it'll find the ports, it'll find all that other information, but it won't find the MAC addresses for you. So if you want the MAC address and you want that additional like vendor information that goes with the MAC address, always make sure to run the command as sudo, basically as root, and also remember this if you're going to be using a cron job. So if you're going to be using cron tab is the scheduler for basically scheduled tasks within the Linux world. You are going to want to use sudo cron tab -e instead of simply cron tab -e. So when you go to fire off the nmap executable, that it actually runs with those elevated privileges. This is just one of those things that can come up. You're not thinking about it. You simply type in nmap and whatever options and whatever else in the command line, and then you're not getting the MAC addresses for whatever reason. The reason for that is because you're not basically running those commands as root. You're not running those using the sudo command. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. The final thing is, again, with using one of these command line utilities that is able to output into a text format, you may want to be using this in some kind of a script project that you're doing. So again, I'm working on a little project right now where approximately every 10 minutes, Nmap fires off, it grabs all the information from the network and then dumps that into a text file. Again, for whatever reason, when you try to actually run Nmap directly from cron tab, directly from the cron job, you may run into some weird issues. Again, I took a look at this for troubleshooting and all that. Basically, what they recommend is that for the cron job, you actually target a bash script. So you have a bash script, a shell script, that has the nmap command within that shell script, and that's how you fire nmap off. So that's just, again, one of those weird kind of quirks there. So again, if you're going to be using nmap, at the end of the day, it works very well. You will get the results. You know, it'll work well for you once you understand the results that you're going to be getting back. But make sure to test when you're going to be running nmap. Generally, you're going to be wanting to run that as the root, or as, you know, using the sudo command. And then finally, if you are going to be using this basically in some type of cron job, basically like automated process, do think about firing this off from a script. So have cron tab point to a shell script, and then have that shell script actually fire off the nmap command, because for whatever reason that seems to make it work better. So with that, let's go over to my demonstration computer. I will show you the website for Nmap so you get a bit of an idea of what that website looks like, all of the reference information that is there, and then we'll go over to my actual Linux server. I will run Nmap for you, show you how that looks, and then we will go and take a look at the text output and kind of show you the differences with different types of options when Nmap is being used. So here we are at my demonstration computer, and I have brought up nmap.org. So nmap.org is the official website for Nmap, and you can come here and you can get all of the information. Now, to be clear, Nmap has been around for a long time, so it's in all, or should be in all, the Linux repositories for being able to download and install software onto your Linux machine very easily. So if you're in the Ubuntu world, basically you can do apt-get install, just simply nmap, and you'll be able to install Nmap, do whatever command you need to do in CentOS or the Red Hat world, but basically you won't need to actually have to download this from Nmap itself in order to install it. But the Nmap website is useful for you for reference information. If you go down, one of the nice things about Nmap is it is free and it is open source. So again, as I've talked about before, you can use Nmap, basically use it in a script, have that output be dumped into some type of folder, and then have your script be able to then parse the information within that output. So basically you can use Nmap as a component to some kind of custom application that you're going to be creating. Do make sure to go and read the license though, if you're going to be doing something such as selling the product. So again, one of the important things to remember in the real world of using technology is you can use something in a lab environment, you can use something in your production environment, and then you can package something and sell it. But all of those things, the license may get in the way. So do make sure whenever you're going to be using a product, especially if you plan to distribute it in any kind of way, that you actually go through and read the license. But the license is here, and in general, again, it's free and open source, and you shouldn't have too many issues. We can go over here to the reference guide, and when you go to the reference guide, they're going to give you basically all of the information on how to use Nmap, and you have this little table of contents here. You can go through and take a look at certain types of information. So if you want to understand a little bit more about OS detection, you can go here and it'll explain the OS detection for you. If you want to go back, it'll tell you about service and version detection. Go back to reference guide. If you want to go down and do things like timing and performance, they will give you some information here. Again, it is important to understand that there are a metric crap ton of options for when you're going to be using Nmap. So again, depending on your particular situation and what you're trying to accomplish, you may need to go in and tweak what options and stuff that you're particularly going to be using. I'm going to be showing you some basic commands on how to use Nmap today. So just kind of keep that in mind. If what I'm showing you doesn't give you what you want, go take a look. There's a whole bunch of different options here. So with that, let's go over to my computer and I'll actually show you how to fire off the Nmap. So here we are at my server. I already have installed Nmap, but if you need to install Nmap, you simply do sudo apt-get install, and then you simply say nmap. There's nothing other than that. Then you're going to hit enter. It's going to ask for your password, and then it's already installed for me, but if it wasn't installed for you, nmap would be installed. There are no configuration files or any other type of thing that you're really going to have to worry about. Once nmap is installed, you can simply call it from the command line. Now from here, one of the things we can do is we can actually simply query one particular host on the network. So we can scan either the entire network or we can scan one particular host. So let's say you have one server. You have one server, you're concerned about what ports are open or some information, or you've simply seen a device pop up on your network and you want to know more information about it. You can simply query that one particular device. So what we would do here is we do sudo. Again, by and large, always use sudo for the command. That will give you the MAC address and some other different things. Then we will simply say nmap. I am not going to use any particular options right now, so we're going to run it as stock standard, and we're going to do 192.168. Let's say 1.1. So basically when I do this, it is going to do a basic scan of my particular router. Then all I have to do is I have to hit enter, and then we're going to get this starting the Nmap scan. So it is important to understand that if you don't use the verbose option here, that basically this is all you're going to see until the scan actually finishes. Now if you press a button, it will show you about how long it's through the process. So we can see it's about 48% done. If I do up again, it now shows me it's about 66% done. So if you do want a status update, essentially you can just hit the arrow key and it will give you what the status update is. And you can just sit here and you can wait as it tries to get the information for you about that particular device. So we have the Nmap. So this is the Nmap report for gateway. So it was able to pull the host name 192.168.1.1. It shows me that I have these ports open, 53, 80, and 5000. It then gives me the MAC address. And then from the MAC address, what can be very useful here is it can then give me the vendor information. So this can be very useful for you, again, when you're scanning a network and you have a lot of network devices, right? So when you get the vendor information from a MAC address, this may not be the most useful thing for you for desktop computers, right? Because it's going to be getting the vendor information for the actual network card within within the device. So the difference between, you know, the network card and the device versus the computer itself, you may not get Dell here. You may not get HP here. You may get the vendor for the network card itself. But why this can be useful for devices on the network, think about printers. Again, think about networking equipment like this is, that type of thing. One of the nice parts about that is if you can get the vendor information for those types of devices, it might be a lot easier for you to figure out what that device is. So I can sit here and go, oh, that's Netgear. I know the only devices on my network that are Netgear are my networking devices, so I have an idea of what that is. Past that, what we can do is, let me clear the screen. So now let's look at scanning the entire network. So before I was able to query just one particular IP address, but now I want to scan my entire subnet. So again, I'm going to do sudo again, space nmap again. And then one of the things I'm going to do here is do hyphen and then lowercase v. So what this is going to be is this is going to be verbose. So it's actually going to be just automatically telling me what's going on the screen. So when you're running nmap against an entire network, it can take a long time. Again, it's scanning a lot of different ports, it's scanning all the different devices. So this is one of those things when you run nmap, you may want to like wander off and go get a cup of coffee. Frankly, go get lunch, honestly, depending on how big your network is, how many devices you have. And so using the verbose option is just very useful because then it updates and it tells you what's happening. You don't have to go over and play with the screen. So basically, we're just going to be doing nmap space hyphen v. Then we do 192.168.1.0. So this is my subnet here. So I'm on the 192.168.1 subnet. And then it's a class C, so I'm going to do a /24. So again, you need to know a little bit about networking in order to be able to do these scans. So the first thing that you do is you put in what your network is, 192.168.1.0, whatever that is, and then whatever your subnet is. So this is a class C. A class C is a /24. A class B would be a /16. A class A would be a /8. So it depends on what your particular subnet is. And basically, that's all that we're going to need in order to be able to run this scan. And so then we're going to hit enter. And now it's going through and we can see, you know, it started the scan. It's now scanning 255 hosts because it is scanning that network. And the nice part here about this verbose option is, again, it's now actually telling you what's going on. So if you're running this on a computer sitting in the corner, you can be going off and working on another computer and you can just take a look and make sure that this is updating itself. Again, nmap can take a very long time to run. So it's one of those things where if you're just sitting there and all you're doing is looking at a little blinking cursor, that may be a little bit frustrating for you. So with this, it's going to take a second, and so we'll see what the results are when it's done. So there we go. Now the basic scan is done. We can go down here and we can see that 256 IP addresses, 13 hosts were found, and it took approximately 424 seconds. So on my crappy little network with 13 hosts, that took about 8 minutes. So again, do remember with Nmap, it can take you a little bit of time. Now we can then go through and we can basically scroll through and see the basic information that was found. So we can see such as 192.168.1.9. This is an Apple device. This is the MAC address. These are the ports that are open. And we can see it's an iPhone sync. Has an iPhone sync port open, so it's most likely an iPhone. We can see 192.168.1.17. This has this particular port open. That's also most likely an Apple device. 192.168.1.15. It has Microsoft, has 445 port open. So basically this is a Samba. It has some kind of file sharing services on it. Also an Apple device. Lots of Apple devices. We can see here I have another Netgear device. We can see here I have another Netgear device, and basically you can scroll through and you can see the different information. So basically this is going to be giving us our IP addresses. This is going to be giving us the ports that are open. Because we ran this as root, sudo, we are going to be getting the MAC address, and then we're going to get the vendor for the device, so on and so forth. So basically we can go through and we can see all of this information. Now obviously this isn't the most useful here. So I mean, it is giving us information, but it's simply giving this to us in the terminal. It would be a lot better if we can simply get this in a text output file. So one of the things you can do is you can do sudo Now let me clear the screen. Let me clear the screen here. So one of the things you can do is, again, you do sudo. Then you can run nmap as you would, 192.168.1.0/24. But then from here, we can select an output file and an output format. So if you do hyphen lowercase o, uppercase n, this will output in just a basic text fashion. If you do OX, this will output as an XML file. So again, as I've talked about before, you can output the information into a file and then have some kind of other script try to parse the information in that file. So if you want to output this as an XML file so that this can be read by some other script that you're creating, you would want to do hyphen O uppercase X. But again, for a text file, we can do hyphen O, uppercase N, and then you simply put where you want it to go. So basically wherever you have permission to write on your particular server. So home, our user is Bob, and then I can simply, print this out as, test.txt. And so what would happen here is we're running nmap as the root. We are going to be scanning our entire network. We are going to be outputting to a text file, and this is where we're going to be outputting to. This is the point where I would also offer a couple of other options for you to think about. So after nmap here, there's two options you might think about running. So if you do hyphen A, so hyphen uppercase A, this will do what is called an aggressive nmap scan. So the aggressive nmap scan will also look for things and try to determine what the operating system of the device is. Now this doesn't work great. It's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it might give you some useful things if you're looking for some additional information. So if you're trying to figure out what the device is, maybe it's a phone device or something like that, using hyphen A might be able to do that for you. If you're trying to figure out what the operating system for devices are, this might work for you. Again, it's one of those, I don't know, 25% of the time it actually works, but 25% is better than nothing. So you might want to do hyphen A. The other thing that you might want to do to try to speed up the scan is hyphen F. So what hyphen F is going to do is it's going to restrict the port scanning to the 100 most common ports. So when you're dealing with networking ports, there's just a gajillion networking ports a device can theoretically use. And so if Nmap is trying to scan all of the ports, it will take it a while to scan all the ports, especially if there's a lot of devices on the network. Now, if you only care about the most common ports, 22, 80, 443, that type of thing, if you do hyphen F, that will only scan the 100 most common ports, and then it'll be a lot faster, obviously. So that's just, again, one of those things to be thinking about. Think about doing the hyphen A, uppercase A. That will be the aggressive. That will try to give you the operating system information and such. And then hyphen F, this will be fast for you. It'll scan only the 100 most common ports. And then again, here, hyphen ON or OX, N gives you a text file, X would give you an XML file. So I've already done a few scans and I've outputted them to a folder. So I've outputted them to home Bob, right? So we can go here, we're at the home folder for Bob, and we can see I have nmap scan A, so that's with A, nmap scan AF. We have an AF with XML, so on and so forth. And so I just want to show you what these scans look like, and I think it's a lot easier just to see them in a text file. Now, the important thing here is, so this is an Nmap basic scan as text, so hyphen ON, hyphen ON using the A, hyphen ON using AF, and then for hyphen OX, this is the XML. So again, just so you understand the difference between the standard text formatting and the XML formatting, this is the standard text formatting. So again, very easy for a human to be able to read. Okay, this is what my IP address is here. This is what my MAC address is here. This is the vendor here. I can go down, take a look and see what the ports are. This is very easy for me as a human to read. The issue with this, though, is if you're trying to parse this, if you're trying to have another script read this particular file, it might be difficult for a script to read the file. So that's where you can output to XML. And XML, it's a pain for a human to read, right? I'm sitting here and it's like, okay, so here's 192.168.1.1. Okay, here's the MAC address, here's the vendor, right? Okay, I've got a port here, right? So it gives me all of this information. It may actually give me more information, but it's difficult as a person to read. So this is one of those things you need to think about what you want your output to look like. So this is what basically the XML looks like. We will go here and basically let's take a look at the difference between a basic scan. So if you use no options, an A scan, so this is where if you do the aggressive scanning, and the AF, this is where you do the aggressive scanning, but you only scan the 100 most common networking ports. So we take a look at the basic scan here. What we can see as it goes through, it does a scan. Again, we see 192.168.1.1. That is my router. We can see that the different ports that are open here, 5385,000. We can see what the MAC address is, and we can see what the vendor is. It simply goes down to 192 or 192.168.1.2. So this is the next device. Shows me 5,009 and 10,000 are there. It shows me the MAC address, and it shows me the probable vendor. Go down to 1.3. Again, it's using 62,078 for a port. It's showing me the MAC address, and it's showing me the vendor. So this is basically, it just gives me all of the basic information about the network. It gives me the IP address. It gives me the ports that are open that it detects, MAC address, and vendor. You can go through, again, very easy to read. If we go over to Nmap scan A, so this is the aggressive scanning. So Nmap space hyphen uppercase A, we take a look at this, and we're going to be getting a lot more information out of this. So basically, if we go down, we have information for 192.168.1.1. We have the information for it's a Netgear router. It's an Orbi index. We can see what the operating system is. So OS details. So it's an OpenWRT Chaos Calmer 15.05. So it's able to give us a lot more information about what's going on with that. If we go down to 192.168.1.2, basically we can see, okay, these are the ports that are open, just like we saw before. It gives us some version information about the service, right? So if we go over here and look at 192.168.1.2, right? Basically, it just gives us the airport admin. It gives me the 5009 port. Here, it tries to give me a little bit more information. The version, Apple Airport or Time Capsule admin. Again, the MAC address, the vendor. Basically, it tries to tell me what kind of operating system that it's running. So it's seeing it as NetBSD 5.x and showing me some other information here. Again, we can go down. So this is all for 192.168.1.2. Then we go to 192.168.1.3. It's showing me, again, the port that's open. It's showing me the MAC address, showing me the vendor. And then here, what it's trying to do is it's trying to figure out what the fingerprint of the operating system is. It wasn't able to figure that out, so it kind of just fails out on that point. Then we come down here, let's see, 192.168.1.7. Again, it shows us the port that's open. It's trying to figure out what kind of OS is running on this particular device. And for whatever reason, it thinks it's a Fortinet FortiGate 100D firewall with an 87% accuracy. So it does try to give you that type of information. So basically, this is what you're looking at when you're looking at the A. So this is the aggressive scanning. It gives you a lot more information. It might be useful to you. It may not. Again, the type of thing like what kind of OS your networking devices are using. That might be useful for you. Maybe some specific names. So this is a Netgear RBS 850. That type of thing might be useful for you. And this is the kind of thing you get out using the -A option. Then we go over and we take a look at the AF. And if you take a look at this, basically this looks the same as the A. The difference between A and AF is that this will be only scanning for the most popular 100 ports. So let's go to 192.168.1.8 to show you. So this is the IP address. So again, AF is going to only look for the 100 most common ports. So we take a look here, we see it finds port 5000, port 49,152, 49,153, and 49,154. If we go over and we take a look at the A option, if we go down here, 192.168.1.1, you will notice that it was able to find additional ports. So this finds 5,000, 7,000, 7,100, and then 49,152, 53, 54. And so this is one of those things, again, depending on how much information you want out of your network. Do you want to know every single port that's open or available on your network? You may want to run the A, simply use the A option, so that will give you the aggressive scan. But if you're just trying to figure out if the most popular, most common ports are open, that's where you run the AF scan. So this, again, just to show you, that only gives you 4 ports being available, where this gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ports being available. So again, depending on your particular situation, that may matter or not. So this is the kind of differences between basically the basic scan without any options, the A scan, and the AF. Again, when you use ON, that will give you this text output. If you do OX, that will then give you the output in XML that allows some type of script to be able to parse it. So now you have a basic idea of how to use Nmap and how to output the results into a text file so that you can either read, you can email to somebody else, or again, if you output into something like an XML format, you can actually have another type of script, then parse that information for whatever type of application that you're trying to build. Now, before we get to the actual final thoughts, I do want to show you one of the projects that I'm currently working on to try to give you an idea of why these command line tools are so useful in the modern world of being an IT professional. So when you start looking at these command line tools, especially when you're a noob, right? When you're new, all this stuff is kind of complicated. And if you have the option between some kind of nice, pretty graphical user interface and something like Nmap, you're probably going to be going to the graphical user interface. The thing is, with tools such as Nmap, you can output this information and then you can write scripts in order to parse and then act on that information as best you see fit. Again, in the modern world of technology, we're looking at trying to create more and more custom applications to do exactly what we need to do. So if we can output something into a text file, then we can create scripts to then work on that text file and then create applications that do exactly what we want. So let's go over to the demonstration computer again. I'll show you a little application that I'm currently working on. And basically with this small little application, what happens is I get that XML text file that's outputted from Nmap. What I then do is I use PHP to then parse the information in that XML file. I then input that data into a MySQL database table, and then once the information is in that MySQL database table, I have then created a little application that is able to interact with that information to give me something that is useful for me. So let's go over to my demonstration computer to just show you an example of what you can do, just to kind of get into your head why these kind of command line tools are so useful in the real world. So here we are at the little application that I've created. So essentially what I have happening is on my server, every 10 minutes, I have Nmap fire off. So I have a shell script that fires Nmap off. It then outputs the information into an XML file. I then use a PHP script also within that cron job in order to then parse the information within the XML file and then dump all of that data into a MySQL database. Once it's in a MySQL database, then I can do things such as be able to print out the information onto an HTML form such as this. So this right here is simply the log. So this shows me whenever new information has been inputted into my MySQL table. So I can see this scan ran at 1 o'clock. It was able to find these different IP addresses. It was able to find these MAC addresses, the vendor information, the open ports. So I can just see these open ports that are open here. Then this shows me the Nmap timestamp. So basically when the Nmap script actually ran, and then when the information was then inputted into the MySQL database table. So the first thing that I have here is, again, this is just a very simple output to give me information that I'm interested in. So I can sit here and I can see, you know, whether port 80 is open on particular devices, or again, what different ports are open. Past that, I can go over to this device report right here, and this shows me information for particular time frames. So it starts off with what it's been able to to detect in the past hour. So we can see right now it's 11:24. So since 10:24 this morning, it's been able to detect these different devices. So again, these are the IP addresses, these are the MAC addresses, these are the vendors. I have host names, so I have another script that allows me to add host names, that type of thing. User agent information. So again, I have a different script that allows me to pull a user agent information. So I'm able to tie all this together here. Again, we can go down, we can see things like the user agent information. Again, this actually comes from a different script, but the vendor report, so it can show me the different vendors I have on the network. So it can show me the 3 Netgear devices. I can click on this, and then it shows me which devices these are. So if I was interested in which Netgear devices are on the network, I can say, oh, okay, 192.168.1.1, .1.12, and .1.14. These are my Netgear devices. Do a little Apple flex here, a little Apple flex. Oh, let me see all my Apple devices. Okay, so those are all my Apple devices on the network, right? So it's able to present all of this information. And again, I have a different table and some other stuff. So it allows me to add things like a description to what these particular devices are, that type of thing. I can go down, I can see the different ports that are open. So again, things like port 80. So let's say I'm really interested to know what devices on my network have port 80 open. I can then simply click on this. It tells me what port 80 is, and then it tells me .1.1, .1.7, .1.12, .1.14, and .1.25. All of these have port 80 open. So if I'm concerned from a security standpoint, I can take a look at that. So again, this shows me what has been discovered in the past hour. I can click on like past week. So I can click on all the devices that have been detected in the past week. We go down here, we can see a total of 20 devices have been detected in the next week. So again, that's one nice thing with having Nmap scan periodically is sometimes computers are off, sometimes computers are rebooting, sometimes computers are off the network. So if it's continuously scanning, dumping that information into a database, then you can collect from all the different scans. So for here, again, we see I have 3 Netgear devices like I had before. Got up to 12 Apple devices. That's some Apple flexing. I like Apple. If you're ever wondering, does Eli really like Apple devices? Well, I've got 12 on my note. That's at least. I think I have more than that. But one of the interesting things is, again, this also detected my TV. So I have a smart TV. So one of the times when the Nmap was scanning, my smart TV was on. So I can go here and I can click on what that device is. And it shows me my smart TV is at 192.168.1.18. So it shows me information such as that. Again, if we go back, we can see things, again, like Oracle VirtualBox. So I had a couple of virtual machines that were running, so I could click on that. And then we have different port discovery down here. So look at all these ports. These are all the different ports that were discovered on my network. So you can go here and you can say, I wonder what port 458 is. So this is some kind of Apple QuickTime service, and it was running on IP address .1.20. So basically, what I'm showing you here is simply what I have been able to create by using the outputs from the Nmap script when it's running. If we go down, we can take a look at some of the scripting itself. So I have this nmap parse. So this basically what this does is it parses the XML file. So again, every 10 minutes I have nmap run. So this is the nmap cron scan XML. So what it's going to be doing is it's going to be reading from this file. It's then going to be grabbing these different variables and then assigning values to these variables. It basically goes through each line in the file, and depending on what's in that particular line, it then grabs that particular information and then assigns a value here, right? So this is where it gets the IP address, this is where it gets the vendor, this is where it gets the MAC address, this is where it gets the host name if it's available, this is where it gets all the ports. Then here is where you then actually add all the values to the database. So SQL insert into log, IP, MAC, vendor, host name, ports, timestamp, nmap timestamp, and then the values for those particular variables, and then that dumps it in. And then basically we then have the reports here, and these are the reports. So that nmap drill down. So this right here is actually this particular report we're looking at right now. So it shows us the IP addresses, the MAC addresses, all that type of thing. Basically what we can see is for this, again, we've got the SQL statements. This is where you print out the IP addresses, and so it's able to pull that information from the table. The one thing that I do want to show you here is the shell script. So this is the bash script that I've created. So in Cron tab, so for Cron tabs, you use the Cron tab application. So sudo cron tab, so you run as root. And so basically, I have the cron tab pointed to this particular script. The first thing that I actually do is I parse the previous nmap export. So basically what happens is nmap runs, and then the next time, what this is going to do is it's going to parse the previous nmap output. And then after it's parsed that, dump the data into the database, then I'm going to be running nmap again. So basically here, I'm going to be running nmap 192.168.1.0 / 24 OX. It's then going to be outputting to here, and this is how it's able to run. So basically with that outputs into the XML file. Then I have the parse script dump that information into a database, so on and so forth. And so this is where we start to get to some interesting things in the modern world of IT administration. So yay! Have I made a Linux command line tool look exciting to you? I hope I did, because if this doesn't look exciting, you might want to find a different occupation. But I really think this is the kind of cool thing that, again, modern IT administrators really need to be looking at, with the idea of you have a pretty basic tool, but with that pretty basic tool, you can output what it's able to find and discover into something such as an XML file. Then once it's in an XML file, you can create scripts or an application to present you the exact information that you care about. So again, imagine if you had nmap run, it's going through, it's detecting all the ports that are open, and then if a particular port such as port 80 is open, you could possibly have a script that fires off to email you an alert. So basically you have a script that goes through, it parses that XML file. If port 80 is open, then email you as the administrator to say, hey, you've got a port 80 open on the network, you might want to take a look at that. Or again, if you're having nmap scan, you're dumping all that data into a database. Once it's in a database, you can then do queries to see where there are differences. So if a new device shows up on the network and you're not expecting a new device to show up on the network, you can be like, I wonder if that's some like little Raspberry Pi. Did somebody just shove a little Raspberry Pi on my network and it's trying to discover, what's going on? Well, if you have something like Nmap running every 10, 20, 30 minutes, an hour, something like that, you're able to then parse the information. Whenever a new device shows up on the network, you go, let me track that down and figure out, is it the secretary's, laptop computer that she brought in so she could print something, or is that some kind of like little Raspberry Pi device that's trying to do something nefarious on the network, right? That's the kind of cool stuff that you can start doing when you use tools such as Nmap. Now again, when you're going to be using Nmap, generally always try to run it as root or use sudo to run it. That will then give you the MAC address information and then the vendor information along with it. Beyond that, then do go and play with the different options. Again, -A, what -A does is it's an aggressive scan, so it's going to look for things such as the operating system and the actual device type. That may be useful for you, but it gives you a lot of just kind of crappy information, right? If you don't really care about the operating system, if you don't really care about that additional information, just running Nmap without any additional options may be a better thing for you. Again, then you'll get the IP address, the ports, the MAC address, and the vendor. That may be all you need. It's a lot easier to read. But if you need some additional information, you might want to do that -A, that more aggressive scan. Then you have the -F. One of the things that I'll warn you about with -F is -F will make Nmap run a lot faster because it's only going to scan the 100 most common ports. So a lot of people say you should just use that as the default. But do realize it's only scanning for the most common 100 ports. So again, especially if you're doing this for network security, that means if somebody opens up a port that's different than one of those standard 100 ports, it's not going to be detected. So one of the things you have to think about is, do you prefer speed or do you prefer accuracy? Again, what the answer is, That's up to you, but just keep that in mind. That is one of the things that I will warn you, because in a lot of the introductory material on how to use Nmap, most of the stuff that I've seen is simply to use -f like all the time, which again, for most people is probably fine, but if you just get used to using -f and you're not really thinking about why you're using -f, that might run you into some problems. Again, there are a lot of other options. Again, things like timeouts. Do you realize when Nmap is going to scan your network, especially if you have a large network or if you have a lot of devices on your network? It can take a lot of time, especially if devices aren't overly responsive. So there are some timeout options that you may want to play around with. But again, with those, test, play around with, see what works, see what doesn't work, and go on from there. And really, that's about it. So again, Nmap is a really cool thing. If you have any questions about it, definitely go to nmap.org. Play. Again, set it off in the corner, have it run, go off, get a cup of coffee. Come back, see what the results are. Try another option, go off, get another cup of coffee. See what the results are. Go off, try another option. Go to the bathroom, relieve yourself from the first 2 cups of coffee, come back, see what the results are, and go from there. I would highly recommend you use the -v, so basically the verbose option if you're using this at the command line, because then it will spit out results as it's going through. It'll tell you where it's at in the process. That can be very useful for you. Again, with something like Nmap, I would highly recommend you use a spare laptop or use a spare computer. You have it running in the corner while you're doing something else. And so if you're using the verbose option, you can just simply go, okay, yeah, it's still doing whatever it's supposed to do. And then you can keep doing your work. Without that verbose option, you just get a blinking cursor. And when it's done, it's done. Has it locked up? Has it frozen? Is it just taking a long time? Who knows? Just gotta wait for that blinking cursor to stop. So anyways, as always, I enjoy doing this class. I look forward to seeing you on the next one. If you like the content that I create, please think about going to elithecomputerguy.com and becoming a member or donating. Please understand that all of the educational videos are in front of the paywall. That includes the videos, that includes the notes, the diagrams, and the code example. All of that is freely available and in front of the paywall. But if you want to watch opinion videos or if you want to be able to comment, you do need to become a member. Membership is $5 a month or $60 a year and gives you access to those opinion videos and the ability to comment. If you don't want to become a member, you just want to give a one-time donation, there's also a donate button where you can do that. Please understand, in order to provide the education that I am, it does cost money. Servers cost money, equipment costs money, travel costs money. All of these things cost a reasonable amount of money, and the fact of the matter is YouTube's advertising program no longer supports creators the way that it used to. So if you want these classes to continue to stick around and you find them to be valuable, please think about either becoming a monthly member or donating a few dollars for this project.